answer your question, which was bifurcated. Yes, they do have a rating system,
Okay.
but the rating system works like this. We have a checkoff list. I complete the checkoff list with my stakeholders. Stakeholders are our council members, police chief, fire chief. We then turn that into the county for them to sanction. They must do theirs in the appendices and then turn theirs to the state police. The state police sanctions the county, the borough, then they send it to FEMA. So it's a step-by-step gradation. Yes, sir.
I mean, you've been very modest in when you were explaining what your qualifications are for this job. I wonder, I mean, it certainly has at least an indirect bearing on your qualifications in terms of your military background. Would you mind just explaining that? I just
Military background?
Add to what your qualifications were, because I think it's very appropriate.
Military background, I was a captain, United States Marine Corps. I did 2 tours of Vietnam and I did a tour in the Gulf. I was wounded twice, I was a company commander of an infantry unit. Also, after Vietnam, I served the United States Embassy, Stockholm, Sweden, Copenhagen, Denmark, and Wiesbaden, Germany, as an intel officer.
So I just wanted to raise that because if anybody has, qualifications to talk about emergencies, I think it's Emmett.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just have a couple questions, so maybe I'll cut in front of Councilman your side, if that's okay. Again, thank you for coming tonight to speak with us. We greatly appreciate it. A couple things. The last we heard up here was that there was some report or plan that's now sitting with the county for review. Is that true?
That is what we're doing right now.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. And
This is the mitigation plan. It's an updating. In
okay.
other words, if the needs change that indicate,
Right.
we're updating this. Our demands, our needs, from Old County to jurisdictional. What is our greatest hazard? What mitigation activity have we did? What would be capital improvements? This is not a wish list. This is a doable function that we can do.
Right.
We're working together with the engineers, with the county, and with our consultants.
Very nice.
Yes.
Just 2 other questions. One is in terms of the fact that there's not a generator at the school. Was that something that Mr. Spears said was on the horizon for the Board of Education, or do we have any status of that? I know that he presented them with, I'm sure, a number of items on some sort of capital list. I don't know if they're looking into that this year or maybe in the future years.
One of the things with the jurisdictional focus that we're working on, for instance, hypothetical, I have a need for a situation that arises. I can reach out to Clark. Clark received a grant. They got 40 generators. Now, I'm working with Jared Hughes, who is the coordinator there. We have mutual agreement. If I need generators, if they are not utilizing theirs, I can get them.
Okay. Well, that's,
Seconding of the question, in the foreseeable future, that's something that may be broached to the Board of Education. Could we purchase it? And of course, the third thing is possibility or the potentiality of writing a grant to see if we need it. But if we do that, this negates what the plan is focusing on. The duplication of things. Why would we need 20 generators sitting if Clark has 40 and I can opportunity and utilize them in mutual aid process? This collectivity of resources, economical of force. You utilize your personnel needs as they are demand. If I do not need them, I do not require them. But if I need them, I do have a resource to obtain them.
right. Okay. Well, that's very good to know about Clark specifically. And it sounds like it's a good way for us to save a little money in the meantime and have that shared service. So that's excellent. And then finally, you brought up communication. I think it's something we've definitely improved on from 2011 when we were hit with Irene. But is there anything in particular that we could be doing aside from the alert system and so forth to better our communication with the public. Is there anything that you found specifically?
Well, I spoke with the chief, and one of the things that we're doing with the fire department is the communication center working out of the county again. Again, with the shared services, if we're on the same band, we would have to have the radio communication frequencies. And this is something would have to be talked with in obtaining the radio frequencies. It's already in play because we have mutual aid. We would then need a separate channel for OEM.
Okay.
So it is doable, but it's something would have to be researched and then play in a plan. Without a plan, we do not know where we stand in the event of an emergency.
All right. That's all I have. Thanks again, Emmett.
No problem.
Mayor, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Emmett, how are you?
Fine, man.
Good, good to see you. I was the one who kept questioning the plan because we went through Irene, we went through Sandy, and to be quite honest, there really didn't seem to be a plan out there. So I'm very glad that you're doing it, very glad. Some of the questions I did have been answered, but let me ask a couple of things. One thing I don't want to do is second guess. I don't want to go through, you're preparing a plan, I don't pretend to know half as much as you know about putting a plan together. But does this council get to see that plan before it gets submitted?
Absolutely.
All right, do you have any idea when that might occur?
Our process as we're doing now, we're coordinating all of our efforts. We're submitting this, and our plan is to have that plan ready so you can look at by October, November.
Okay.
We want it by the end of the year. This is our,
So you see the plan being completed by October, November, we'll review it and you'll submit it. But then, as you mentioned, the step-by-step process has to go through a number of different offices.
yes, sir.
When do you see it actually being, I know you can't speak for other offices, okay, but when do you see this plan actually being adopted?
Once we have our resolution that we're in our compliance for our hazards, I submit it to the county. They stamp off as to what they would supply or do, and then it's passed on to the state police. And then it's forwarded.
Then you
on-
wait.
Well, it's again a process.
Right.
Let me just ask one thing, I want to just interject one thing. And when, just recently, we had a plan, and the annexes were done, because I've seen them, and then just recently, how long ago was it when the county got in touch with us, and you then went to the meetings with the county, and all of this other stuff came about?
We had the initial meeting.
It was in a couple, it
Was
was a couple
May.
months, it was May.
Yes, ma'am.
It was May, so we had changes that had, and things were then changing in May, where we were in a position where we felt comfortable, and then these changes came about. Is that,
That is correct.
okay, so you
So we
understand
had
the
to
delay
spend
of
ours
having
by
it here?
end of June.
Yeah,
Right.
Now we're working with the consultants, whereas we're doing the individual pieces, the jurisdictions, working with all of the jurisdictions here in Union County.
Right, because we've really been without, maybe this isn't 100% correct, but we've been without, quote, an adopted plan for at least a year and a half, 2 years. So, I am very glad to hear that it is being submitted. I look forward to reading it. A couple of questions within the plan itself. You mentioned the underpass, obviously it splits the town in two. Are you actually planning for like two different, I don't want to say two separate events, but two different ways to respond to the same event? On one side of town, one on the other?
As for the fire department, we strategically place our equipment on the north side, 2 pieces of apparatus, and the south side, 2 pieces of apparatus. In the event of emergency, that gives you immediate response, and then we do activate mutual aid. The mutual aid comes in from the flanks, whether it's Westfield or whether it's Bradford, or Kenilworth can come in from the rear. Clark can come in from the front. But the initial response would be 2 to 3 pieces of apparatus strategically placed. Once activated, you call in your resources.
And then in terms of sheltering, there's a term, I'm forgetting it right now, is it a resource? My wife's a teacher, resource center, that doesn't sound right. But there's step below sheltering. the public
Well,
library.
it is a resource.
Is it a resource? Okay, the public library indicated that during Sandy, they were putting outlets into cords into everything. People plug it in. Are we providing for that on both sides of town? If we don't have a shelter in town, will we have these resource centers?
That's something that we could look into.
All right.
That has not been specifically laid out in the plan to have that there. Predicated again, state of emergency must exist. How long will this operational period last?
And I understand, I know the library, has specifically asked, so if you can speak to the director over here and see how they want to be included, that would be great. One of the things maybe I shouldn't say I got a kick out of, but I found it interesting when I read about New Jersey Transit and their problem. They ended up bringing their trains to the Garwood and the Cranford yards, which I didn't realize we had a train yard here in town. But obviously, we all know they're sitting, on the railroad tracks.
Yes, they are.
Do you know anything about that? Did they talk to you? Did they just dump them there? Or, I didn't realize, to be quite frank with you, that was such high ground. Any connection?
According to the flood plan, that high ground is for a temporary holding facility. And it's utilized that just for the breach to occur. In other words, crest of the river. It'll rise at a certain time period. Well, they can store the engines there, say for 6 hours, 8 hours, whatever, and then move them and not let them stay like what had occurred in Hoboken.
And that's great. Now, as you know, they've been sitting in now for months.
Right. Right.
Are we like, are we now a storage yard?
The amount of equipment has been lessening over a period of time. When they originally came in there and they go all the way down to Cranford, we were notified, and this has happened before, the chief was notified, I was notified, and it's their rails, you can't necessarily.
Oh, no, I understand that.
Right. So it's been there, and the number of engines and cars and whatnot has gradually, dissipated down. Are they there longer than I would have thought they would be? Because they said they were bringing them in to get through the last hurricane season, get them on higher ground. And, though the amount of equipment has dissipated, they're still there, and I imagine now that we're looking at another hurricane season, maybe we'll end up with more coming in, but along with them, supposedly comes additional security. The,
Transit police patrol the tracks.
yeah, the transit police control the tracks, that's actually a benefit to us with the number of things that were taking place along the railroad.
Because I'm not saying that as a negative, I found it really interesting when I read that, I never had heard before of people bringing things to Cranford to protect them from flooding. It just seemed, a little backwards there. Okay, getting back to the sheltering, I recognize that a shelter requires, nurses and a whole host of other items. Do you see the borough actually providing a shelter, or do you see us utilizing another municipality?
At this juncture, I would see there would be another municipality, because it's predicated on the occurrence. Our occurrence, I think primarily would be if there was a fire, whereas multiple houses occurred, whereas families were displaced temporarily. But if it's a large occurrence or an incident, we have no facility like that. That would be passed on to the county for assistance. And those other resource agencies would be American Red Cross, what have you, Salvation Army, what have you.
Okay. Just to tack on what Sarah was asking, I have written down here. The generators, I know we purchased in the last capital program some generators. What buildings now have generators, Chief?
This building is fully functional with a brand new generator.
Okay.
I forget exactly wattages, I think it's something like 40.
40.
Yeah, 40 kW. So this powers up this entire building now, whereas the other one only powered up the police department. And honestly, if you turned on the copper machine, the lights would dim. So the right thing was done, and it was replaced and upgraded. as
What else,
part of-
what else do we have? Yeah.
We purchased small portable Honda generators, and they power up the lights, the traffic lights on South Avenue. The state will not allow us to tie into the North Avenue lights.
Do we have enough for South Avenue all the way?
We have enough, we have a couple in reserve in case we have some families that need them as well. For, medical situations or requirements and so forth. We now have one on a mobile trailer that can power up the pumps for the underpass. Okay, whereas we had brand new pumps, we didn't have facilities for power outage to supply those new pumps. And that's why we flooded the first hurricane, Irene. So that's been taken care of. We're all squared away there.
One of the things that we talked about is having the lists of people who, might need services. Is that within that part of the plan? Or is that a separate entity?
That would be a separate entity. Within the fire department, we do have a list of required medical emergencies. Individuals who would require generators to be put in place due to their medical condition, whether it's oxygen, respiratory, what have you.
All right, we have that.
So we can work in conjunction, that's no problem.
All right, and last, one of the things that was really bothersome during Sandy was, and Mayor and I have discussed this, is PSC&G basically didn't know how we were powered. In other words, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's sort of like, I live on Hickory, all right, where's the power, where are those lines, where does that come from? Didn't know. The entire borough of Garwood, I understand, you said it right, or if I remember correctly, Mayor, there were actually three, I think it was three sources.
There are three sources. We
Do
suffer
you-
the same thing.
All right, yeah.
We come from Westville line.
Right, I would really, really appreciate it if there was a way in this plan to indicate, I'm making this up, each down is powered this way, this, north and south, so people know, like where and how, maybe not how, but where PSC&G's supply comes from. Because you never understand, why is this area out, not that area, this, does PSC&G have any ability to tell us how we're powered?
Not only that, Bill, but they didn't know who was on and who was off.
That's right.
That was a major problem because they kept changing what the number of residences, customers without power daily, and sometimes more than once a day.
Right.
I will be attending a meeting next week with regard to the utilities and the storm, so I made my notes, and there's a couple of people coming to speak, one specifically from PSE&G, who I'm going to corral.
Right.
And
And if you have
Terrible.
any inroads there, and to me, it's not my area, okay, but to me, it just seems pretty basic to know,
So to understand your question,
the power grid in Garwood.
power grid, the source, and determination as to who is on, off, or
Right.
At one point, they told us certain streets were on and they weren't. They were still off.
In fairness,
Yes.
in fairness, the magnitude of this thing, this was a huge outage, I mean.
No, but the issue isn't the outage, the issue is, even right now, if you were to ask them, how is this house powered, they can't tell you. Forget a
But so
hurricane.
many, you're right, there's so many changes made. North Avenue, for instance, is like a castle. One business has power, the next one doesn't. And that was all changed when the addition was put on the school, when the bank was built on the corner by me. So, whereas I used to be on the same power grid as 2 doors down, for instance, from the bank, I'm not anymore. So the Westwood had no power, myself and the bank had power, and it kind of went like this, and nobody could, PSC&G had no idea what they had in place themselves, so that's gonna be an ongoing struggle to find out from them and pin them down, but we're not the only town in that situation.
Oh, I know
Yeah.
that, but we're only, we're only 1 square mile, hope they can figure
Well,
that out.
that's the problem, because a lot of the grids are 4 miles long, and they pass right through town.
Emmett, I want to thank the mayor for having me here. She knows I haven't asked every meeting, but maybe every other.
You skipped a few.
I skipped a few. I'm glad you're working on it. I greatly appreciate it. I recognize and appreciate your experience, and I did notice the flanking of the municipalities. I caught on to that right away. I look forward to getting the plan from you, and and reading, going from there. I look forward to having one adopted.
Well, that's one of the things that we will be bringing up Thursday when I have my meeting, is to improve the capabilities, the coordination, and opportunities to plan and implement risk reduction projects.
And as you're talking, I'm sorry, there were a lot of empty names with the different, offices within the different
There's
positions.
some, yeah.
Have they all been
Fluctuates
filled?
a little bit. We
Regarding
had
that-
discussed that, yeah.
It's like we do an incident command system. Incident command system is built to expand or to reduce. There are certain positions that we do not need to fill because the requirement is being filled by the county for us.
So it doesn't look as if we don't have anybody in the position? Can we indicate filled by county or something like that?
It will indicate that, yes, it will.
It's a good plan, yeah.
That's one of the things they're looking at when we say jurisdictional. We're being specific as to our needs, our demands. You not fill every box just to fill it. You only fill the requirements and the needs, the necessity.
When things get real bad, we can still come to your house, right?
Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
I have
Yes,
one other
ma'am.
question. A while back, I had asked the previous director to look into what's necessary to establish a CERT here, which is a Citizens Emergency Response Team. And I'm wondering if any of that got off the ground. We did have a couple of people volunteer. And I don't know, because we would be eligible perhaps for additional grants.
It's
If
interesting.
we had that in place, yeah.
Very interesting that you'd ask that. I mentioned Jerry Fuchs, he's my second half of the car. He just ran a CERT team training, and they do it also at the fire academy where I'm an instructor. So if we have personnel and put it out there, we do this throughout the county from various boroughs, and it just takes 8, 10 people. And
But we
they can
only
have fun.
had about 3 people came forward at that point, and I'm sure they were here someplace, but.
Well, if we put something out for interested volunteers,
Yeah, well, that's what I did, we put it in the newsletter again, and
Okay.
there were other people who did inquire later on. And just one other thing, when we got the new generator here, was that, the one that was here, was that not taken and installed at the DPW?
I don't know if it's been installed yet. That was
But that's where it's
That was
supposed to
the
go,
plan, yes.
okay. Because they didn't have it, that was one that, yeah, they didn't have a generator, but now they do have one.
It was installed, but it's not connected, is that it?
It's on the roof of the DPW right now. I don't know if electrically it was finished, but I know that the gas work is on. But yes, the generator that was here was definitely brought down to the DPW.
That would be good.
And just for clarification, the generator here is a 60 kW, so it's fairly large. It's a 60,000 watt generator.
Okay.
All right, you guys have any other questions? There being none, I'd like to thank Mr. Garner
my
Thank you.
pleasure.
for coming in.
And as soon as I get an update, I'll be back to the next one.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you.
Bye, Paul.
Before hurricane season if possible.
That's what we're trying to work on.
Thanks.
Bye, Paul.
Okay, next up is an executive session. There is a resolution. Sarah Allen.
Closed session resolution authorizing an executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matter and matters of attorney-client privilege relating to the above and in accordance with NJSA 10-4. Closed session meetings open to the public, exclusion of public subject of matter. Whereas it is necessary for the mayor and council of the Borough of Garwood to conduct an executive session closed to the public in order to discuss the above listed matter. Now therefore be it resolved that the council of the Borough of Garwood hereby moves to go into executive session in accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meeting Act for the purpose of discussing the subject stated above, and be it further resolved that the matters discussed in and the minutes of the closed session shall be disclosed to the public when the reason for confidentiality no longer exists.
Okay, may I have a motion to suspend the regular order of business and go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, all in favor?
Aye.
We're gonna go into the conference room.
No.